Coming up in this episode of Pro Stock Rescue, we visit Jeff at Strange Engineering.
I like the twist to the series because it's a performance base. So it is a car that, looks like it's, in Tony's case, it's a 1981 car. So for a fan or somebody at the track, it looks like a throwback car, but really it's a sleeper because it can compete with today's cars. So it's not a nostalgia class necessarily to go out just for show. It's a race car, and that's what I like about the classes. We're not just making a nostalgia car to go out there, which I think is great. But this is really more of a race class that looks like a nostalgia car instead of the other way around.
We'll be with Scott and Woody in the Pro Stock Rescue Garage as they continue with the build of the 1981 rear Morrison Camaro. We will also have an interesting talk with Tony Christian at the Pro Stock Rescue headquarters. And finally, I got a chance to sit down with our good friend Ted Peters, driver of the Patriot Missile and official NHRA inspector, and we sat down and talked Pro Stock.
Strange Engineering started in the 1950s by my father, Bob Stange. Just started doing side work for customers, whether it was wheels, steering boxes, repairing, and then it grew into a need to make axles for the cars at the time. So way back when, as far as axles were made, they were made out of two pieces and welded together. Same as spools. Spools were actually made from a round disc and a straight piece of tube and then hand welded and then machined. Because back even in the 60s, it really didn't exist. Aftermarket axles started to grow in the late 60s, early 70s. There were companies like Summers Brothers out of California, and Mark Williams came along in the, let's say in the early 70s. So there was three major companies back then starting up, and all kind of started at the same time. Strange, Summers Brothers, and Mark Williams. Strange's product line has grown. We have a lot of depth. So we started out with even doing chassis work, spindles, and then it kind of morphed more into axles and driveline. Dana 60s, if anybody recalls, on a lot of the funny cars throughout the 70s had a Dana 60, and that was predominantly used in Top Fuel and funny car until the 9-inch took over. In the 1980s, we started focusing more on 9-inch components in general. We were one of the first, or the first manufacturer to start making aftermarket cases. What was commonly done in the late 70s and 80s is we'd get a factory case, bore out the case, put better caps on it, fully machined to a larger bore, and then you were able to put a spool in there where you can get a larger, at that time, 35 spline axle. So our history is pretty long, and then in the 80s, we started Team Strange, and from that was probably a key part in our history. We had the Chi-Town Hustler. We had about 7 or 8 cars that were Team Strange cars, and Strange really kind of took off in the 80s. And ever since then, we've grown considerably, not only with driveline, but we do a lot of suspension work as well. So we have a full line of struts, shocks, to our product line as well. My emphasis has always been in marketing. I took over the company probably in the early 90s from my father. He was still working, but I was running the company, since the early 90s. As a kid, I grew up here, so in the summer I would do odd jobs, whether it was cleaning, doing the yard or digging ditches or whatever it was, or operating a broach. So I I did some simple milling, simple lathe work. So it was a really good experience for me as a kid or a teenager, because I got to know a lot of people that worked there and got a much better understanding of how people felt about their job, their work ethic. It just was a great experience to grow up in doing those jobs. I've also probably done every job here throughout my growth, so whether it was purchasing or it was scheduling. The only thing I really haven't done in this company would be to program a CNC machine. Every other facet of the operation I have done myself, including sales, and technical support, which to me is kind of the backbone of our company. Right now, my emphasis is more on marketing. That's really what I enjoy. I enjoy talking to customers, learning from them, learning what they want, what they like, don't like, just the interaction. I still go to a lot of races. I prefer to walk the races pit by pit and just talk to people, not selling people, but just to talk to them about their car, just in general, and whatever they want to discuss. So I still enjoy the sport and the people in the sport. So I try to spend a lot of my, to me that's free time. That's my fun time, is actually go to a race and walk around and talk to people. I enjoy that part of the job the most. I worked in the sales department just as a salesperson for probably about 10 to 15 years. So even though I was running the company, that was my primary job, was in sales. And it was just Jeff, so if they talked to somebody, they just knew they were talking to a Jeff. And I got a lot of information and feedback from customers because no one's guard is up. And it was a great way to talk to customers and get ideas, get their feedback, again, of what they like, don't like. And most of our ideas come from our customers. So most of the product that we develop is based on customer input. There are some items that we'll do, that we think we see a niche or a spot for a product, and we'll develop a product and then get input. But a lot of our ideas have spawned from customers and good relationship with key customers. Because they're out in the field, a builder's building a car, they're building the car all the time. We're not builders. So it's always good to get the feedback. Same as racers. Racers are racing every weekend. We're not. I can get out to a race, and I think I can empathize with the racers, and I understand how much work and effort goes into it. So for me, it's very important to have our products where we support those racers, because it is a lot of time and effort, and we want our products to be safe and dependable. To me, it's not work. It's really, and it's hard for people, I guess, and I'm sure there's other industries like this. But for me, my personal life is woven into my work life. So it's one thing. Most of my hobbies, I like photography, but that really spawned from racing, how to shoot product or shoot cars. So even my hobbies are usually based around what we do here at Strange.
Okay, we've gotten back to the back of the transmission. We'll discuss the drive shaft down the road. Now we're going to do the final thing that transmits power, the rear end housing. So, in the beginning, Scotty, what did these Camaros come with?
Well, the car came with a 12-volt Chevy rear end, which as a street car would be sufficient, but as a race car, they were fragile. As one of these Pro Stock cars, it just wasn't even possible in 1980, so you can imagine today. So this is a Ford rear end, which is stronger and easier to change gear ratios because this is the center that comes out. So Woody can tell you about the modifications we did on the Ford rear end in the day.
Okay. Even back into the early, mid-70s is when we started doing the Ford rear end housings and getting away from the Dana Chrysler rear ends. They were just too heavy, and their gear life was not as good as what is available in the Fords.
Right, and the Dana was to replace the Chevy rear end. That's what they were doing for a while, but it was too heavy. So
good point. Good point. I passed that one by. Anyway, so what we started doing was taking the center steel stampings out of a 9-inch Ford rear end and putting in our own chromoly tubes, welding that all together, and they were stronger. So then on the nice round tubes, we would fabricate up our 4-link brackets, weld them on, put on a brace on the back of them, and that evolution has stayed somewhat constant, but the materials have gotten better.
Even today, that's efficient on medium cars.
Yeah, well, even this car is a bracket car, we've been sufficient.
Right.
But since we are stepping up to this scenario, what we're going to have to do is get rid of the center steel stamp section and use a fabricated chromoly section with chromoly tubes. In essence, it is the same thing, but made out of better materials.
Just stronger.
Just stronger.
Tubes are inserted inside the existing lower frame rails to extend as far as possible, and the rear connecting tube is being fit. upper rear frame rails are being fit. They reach to the farthest rear portion of the rear frame and attach to the main hoop. Cross tubes, upright tubes, and diagonal tubes are installed. Triangulation tubes and forward tubes that attach to the main hoop are installed. Cross tubes are installed. The rear quarter panel supports are installed. Rectangular tubing that holds the adjustable shock brackets are being installed. The body is being connected to the upper rear frame rails. The battery hold-down bracket is installed.
Woody and I wanted to keep the back of the car as clean as possible. We put a small battery tray in here. It's all 4130 small tube, and I'm going to put the Braille 16-volt battery. It's a very small battery, but it's more powerful than a big one. We'll keep the weight down in the car. So I've got the battery in. Very simple hold down. And that's the whole back of the car. All we do is run the cable over the shut-off. It's straightforward, and that's all there's going to be back here.
New front lower frame rails are fit inside original inner frame rails for the foundation to build the new front frame. Front cross tubes are attached to the front lower frame rails. The driver's side strut tube is fitted. The strut needs to be located with a fixture to plan the dimensions and bend for the strut tube. Passenger side strut tube is fitted. Both strut tubes are fitted and tack welded into place. The motor mount and support tubes are in place. The diagonal supports are fitted on each side. The strut tube triangulation tubes are installed. And at this point, Woody attaches the control arm mounts. Here, Woody is installing the front motor plate supports. In this scene, we show the installation of the gussets for front lower frame rails and forward cross member tubes. Well, here at AutoWorks TV and the Pro Stock Rescue Show, we bring Ted Peters in for an interview. Ted, the driver of the Patriot Missile. It's such a gorgeous car. I mean, for Dodge lovers and Mopar lovers alike, it's just a treat to see you bring back some history, you know, some of those old Dusters or Demon Dusters, whatever they be. And it's great to have you on board.
Thanks a lot. You know, when I started this, it started off as just kind of a bracket car that I was thinking about, you know, racing, and then they invited me in to run the Nostalgia Pro Stock. So we got it together and we run with those guys.
You know, I have a inkling of some of your history. I think that you still love the old cars too, as I did, such as a kid looking through the magazines. To pick that body style out and to go with that in this category has got to be probably a treat to see it come true for yourself.
Oh, absolutely, because I started off at US 30 drag strip watching racing. And,
Carter the starter?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely, and watching the funny cars, and then, you know, everybody crowd around the funny cars, and when the Pro Stocks come, that's when I got excited, watching the Pro Stock cars.
It's a visual. It's like, oh, that's really a Vega, or that's a Camaro, that's a Duster, or a Challenger.
Absolutely. And I had a dream of driving a Pro Stock car, you know,
For
not
real?
a funny car.
Share that with me. At what age did you really, you know, feel this is what I really want to do?
I was about 9 years old because I have a brother that's like 11 years older than I am. And he got me into drag racing. And when I seen those Pro Stock cars, you know, you could relate to it because you saw them on the street back in 69 and 70. And that's what I wanted to do. I've always wanted to do that.
And then you've seen after, you know, going a few years, I hear that you're NHRA Tech Advisor too?
Yes, I certified chassis for the NHRA and also work division races.
So you get to see such beauty as we see behind us here in the picture. I mean, this car is a work of art, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the attention to detail is amazing.
I noticed when you walked in, you were checking out the carbon fiber on the wheel wells and going, God, how did they get that so tight and nice?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Woody is amazing, so
Isn't he something
it doesn't surprise me at all.
So what brought you into Nostalgia Pro Stock? I mean, you got the car, you did a little bracket racing, and then you thought, I need some horsepower. Where did you acquire that from, and what led you to get with Pappas and the guys?
I had the horsepower. I had a 572 Indy motor, and Mark saw my car, and he asked me would I come out and race with those guys. And I said, well, you know, I'll think about it. And then he said, well, you have to change your scoop and you have to change your wheels, you know, because we need that nostalgia look. And then I think about 2 weeks later, I had the scoop painted, the wheels on it, and was ready to race.
You were in it. That 9-year-old kid came out and said, hey, really? I'm going to go pro stock racing.
Absolutely. Somebody's going to let me run a pro stock car, I'm all in.
So tell me a little bit about the engine build and stuff. I mean, what type of horsepower and who did the work for you?
Right now I have a Alan Johnson, a former Alan Johnson pro stock motor from 1998.
Wow.
It makes approximately 1,100 horsepower, and it's a true 500 cubic inch motor. And I shipped it at about $9,800, $9 grand. So it sounds like a pro stock motor. So I'm getting closer and closer to living that dream. So
That's
it's a lot of fun.
cool. And what's the best ETs you guys have been putting up?
So far, the best ET is ran at 820 at 165 miles an hour.
That's fast.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool car. I mean, to see the structure of the car to run low 8s is pretty cool. I mean, I think Pappas has been high 7s, right?
Yeah, he's been like 797, 798, but we kind of have an artificial cap of 80. So as long as I can get there, I'll do the rest on the tree.
I think that if I was there racing with you and being a tech official, I think we'd strip that Camaro down just one more time to make sure that 10th isn't hidden somewhere.
Oh yeah, when the push comes to shove, I will. We'll pull a sticker on the chassis or something like that. So
do you have family that join you at the racetrack? I mean, do you have any kids or anyone that helps you out?
I have a couple crew guys that come and help me out when they can. You know, because it's hard to find a crew member that knows what to do. You can get a lot of people to come out to the track and hang out and, you know, check the tires. But somebody that puts you in the lanes and, you know, set you up going down the track.
You gotta trust guys with your life a little bit. I mean, when you're packing parachutes and those types of things, and I know 90% of the guys pack their own chutes to drive cars, but you really have to have someone that's in queue with what you guys are up to.
Oh, absolutely, because if you have a half a pound of air off in one of the tires, it's going to drive you left or right, you know, so it gets serious in a hurry. So
and that can change with the weather, everything's a factor when it comes to that.
Absolutely.
So you enjoy driving? Has that been a part of the whole deal now?
Yeah, that's part of it, because, you know, when you're growing up, you want to be a good driver. I mean, having a car is nice, but, you know, I try and focus on the driving. I try and cut good lights. And if you ask those guys who averages the best lights, I'm sure they'll tell you who's the top of it.
You're on your game.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why I saw the fear a little bit in Mark Pappas' eyes when you walked in here tonight. You know, I see him look like, oh, that's the guy that's after me.
Well, he knows I'm coming, but he always has me covered on horsepower, so we're going to try and make that up over the winter.
What are your thoughts on Pro Stock Rescue and the show? Do you think it's a good thing for the kids to learn how things are working in the sport and the build of this car?
Oh, absolutely, because kids nowadays aren't really into cars as much as we used to be. I mean, we used to dream about, you know, driving and racing and things like that. Now the kids are video games and on their telephones. So I think this segment is a great addition. Also, there's a lot of people out there that, you know, remember the pro stocks.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, and now they're not too satisfied with the pro stocks today, so if we can bring that back, you know, I think that would be a great thing.
I think it would be an awesome thing. I think there's still that generation out there that are willing to go to the track to watch these old Camaros and the Chryslers and the Fords come out. And I heard you mention that Bob Glidden was one of your heroes.
Oh, absolutely, because Bob worked very hard, you know, and he was on top for so long, you know, and his work ethic was incredible. And being in the military, I appreciate that work ethic, so I try and bring that to my racing program.
That's very cool. I can't wait to get a chance to watch that thing go down the track. I know they'll have some scheduled shows for the Pro Stock Rescue guys to get along with the 6-second deal that they're building here, along with the 7 and 8-second cars. I think this gelling together is going to be a great thing for all of us.
Absolutely, because the bigger car field that you bring, you know, it brings more fans out. And you have Mopar lovers, Ford lovers, so when you can represent that, everybody comes together. It'd be a great thing having a lot of cars.
It's going to be awesome. I'll tell you what, Pro Stock Rescue fans, a great interview with Ted. It's great to have him on board here with the Pro Stock Rescue team, and we'll have a chance to watch him this summer, hopefully. Join us next time.
Well, the difference between Nostalgia Pro Stock and today's Pro Stock is Pro Stock the way we used to run it in the 70s and 80s, when it was affordable to your, I'm not going to say your average person, but when you could go out and buy a motor for $25,000. Not right now have to go out and lease a motor for $30-some thousand. And the motors we would put in these cars now are bigger motors than 500 inches. You won't have to shift them at 10,500 RPM. You can shift them at 6,500 and come back and run them, run after run after run. People can afford it. They're glorified AT bracket racers, just like the Pro Stockers we used to run when people could afford this stuff. You don't have to go to Jerry Bickler or Haas and spend $175,000 on a car. We can go buy a used Pro Stocker right now or a used trick bracket car. You can go buy these cars at a reasonable price and afford to race them and not spend tons of money. I think other than being unique and the affordability of it, I think what's happening in drag racing right now is people can't relate. Okay? A 25-year-old kid, a 20-year-old kid, you see the average age of people at the racetrack right now, I'm not going to say they're old. Yeah, they're old men. They're in their 40s and 50s. Then you got some grandpas like me hanging around. But the average age right now can relate to an earlier style car, carburetors, motors that they can look at and recognize, not like this new stuff that they have nowadays. I think people can relate to a old Ford Fairmont or an early Camaro like Rear Morrison used to have. Something that they can say, I could have one of those. I'm anxious to do it for a personal reason, okay, is there's a lot of racers around doing it. And then there's this TV show we're working on to get this stuff televised and to get it out to show people what we used to do and what we can still do today that's affordable. Okay, I think it'll be pretty good. I got a phone call from Scott telling me about this, and at first I thought, okay, just another deal, because I'm in with the Street Outlaws group, okay, and I watched that and I thought, maybe this show can be as successful or even more successful than that, because, again, it's real. Okay, some of the Street Outlaw stuff, okay, you have to know what goes on behind the scenes. They have their ambulances there. They think it's street racing. It's really not. It's this, they own the road. Okay, it's an on-the-road drag strip. This is going to be filmed at the racetrack after we get it done. And another neat thing that I like about it is while we're doing it and doing this car, people can see what all is involved in taking one of these cars and getting them race ready. Yes, we're going a little overboard on this car. It's taken us 6 months to build, but it will be a class race car when it gets done, and I'm not going to drive anything less than that. I'm 100% involved in the choice of engines that this car is going to have. This is going to be my deal, okay, the motors, and there's nobody else that I will go to do a motor other than Rear Morrison. Okay, again, he's my best friend, okay, and I'm just anxious to go, what are we going to do for a motor? It'll be a tunnel rammed, either a 622 or a 665, and another thing that's neat about it is when we're going to get this motor, it can be filmed on the dyno, and I just want everybody to see what goes into putting one of these motors together and watching it dynoed and then seeing it performed. It'll be a step-by-step operation that I'm fully involved in, and I'm just kind of anxious for everybody to see it. There's a small Nostalgia Pro Stock group, okay, running around right now that has some pretty nice cars in it. I kind of want to make it bigger. I'm calling Hot Rod this week. I want to get some articles done in Hot Rod Magazine. I want to get it on the internet. I want to get some people interested in this because I think it can turn into a pretty big deal. Why do I think it can? Because there is a group of people out there that would like to race Pro Stock. But that group of people can't afford $3 million. Okay? Who can? This is affordable. This, you come to the races, you can have a small trailer, back your car out, drive it around like we used to. You don't need the golf carts towing it around. And that's going to be one of the rules. Drive your car to the starting line, drive your car to the end, drive it back. And I don't care if your stuff breaks down at the end, push it back. Because if you pull it back, you're broke. Okay? I just want this to be like it used to be, when it was neat and affordable and people used to love watching it and it used to draw crowds in. And I think those days are here again.
Well, you can see in episode 5 of Pro Stock Rescue how this car is just coming along so great. 2 guys working so hard in the Pro Stock Rescue Garage. Things done to this car that you will never ever see on another nostalgia-style Pro Stock car. A great-looking car, a great fit for everybody. Make sure you stay tuned for more of Pro Stock Rescue.